Hi guys, this is Sandy from Sandys-eyecatcher, and today I just want to show you a quick trick on how you can add such a background texture to your image. And yeah, so this is already my final result. This is the edited image, and let's have a look at the before. So that's my image, how it came straight out of camera. And I really like the pose of the model and the raindrops and the whole story, but I thought it could just, it would bring the story a little bit more alive if I have a little bit of a different tonality and also this texture in my background. And as you can see, I shot this here on this, it's this medium gray paper. I think it's called fashion gray paper. And this is really important for you if you want to add any texture, but in a really easy way and not where you have to actually go into Photoshop to select the pass tool and you have to cut out the model, or if you even do quick selection. So anytime if I don't have to cut somebody out to do such a composite, then I prefer it. And my way is really fast, and I will show you how I do it. Obviously, with this kind of background texture, you could use any texture. You can basically shoot your own wall or wallpaper, or you can even go out and shoot any texture that you would find fitting for your image. However, I want to show you something today that I'm using for a really long time, and this is called TRA action. So it's called totally red action. And here in the beginning, when I didn't really know Photoshop that well, that was my easy fix for any image. And in the beginning I had this TRA 1, the original, but I'm not really using actions so much anymore because I obviously know Photoshop now a lot better. And the thing that I still use and I want to recommend to you, and I'm not affiliated with them or anything, but they just sent me this email that they have this Black Friday deal going on for the next 4 or 5 days. And I'm using this thing called here Dirty Pictures, and normally it's $59, and for the next few days it's $29 if you're interested. And I will also show you the website just so you know where to go. So it's called gettotallyred.com, and I'm here in Dirty Pictures. But if you're interested in any of those other things like actions, as I mentioned, or they also have Lightroom presets, then you can definitely check them out. Just if you want to have the easiest way, and as I said, if you don't want to do anything with them, then you can also obviously just go ahead and use your own texture. But I will show you how I work with this thing called the Dirty Pictures. So let me just go in and open the original image. And here the first thing is that I'm in ACR, and I normally do some kind of standard developing first. So here I think the image overall is a little bit too dark, and I just want to bring my shadows up a little bit, because if I can already bring this image into this kind of tone that I have in mind in ACR, then obviously I have to do a lot less work in Photoshop. So here I also want to change the temperature just a little bit. I might brighten it also up, maybe a little bit more contrast, maybe a bit more white. And with Alt, if I just press onto my white with Alt, I will see at which point this image will be bleached out, and I don't want that. And I could also bring in more contrast by pressing on Alt or Option and dragging this black slider down. So now I have already a nice contrast in this image. I might also change it here a little bit in the tint. I don't have to do too much here because the tonality or the tone of the image later will be done in the Dirty Picture plugin. Maybe I just bring my clarity a little bit down so it looks a bit more dreamy overall, maybe a bit more vibrant. But that's probably good enough for here. I will also add a little bit of sharpening, and with Alt or Option I just bring this down. So here I can mask already where I don't want the sharpening applied, so I don't want it on the skin, but I want it a lot on the raindrops. So I can probably just bring the sharpening up and only have it on my raindrops. From here I also want to change my hue just a little bit. So I bring the skin color a little bit more into this orangey tone, so it's not quite so dark. And also my blues, I want them more in this greenish tint, something like that. And the next thing I always do is in my lens correction that I remove chromatic aberration. I probably don't have any here, but it just can never harm to tick on this box. So this is probably already it. Maybe I brighten it up just a little bit more. Let's have a look at the before and after. Yeah, I think this is good enough for now as my basic development. And from here I will open this image into Photoshop. Okay, so now the image opened up in Photoshop, and I want to show you where you can find this plugin, Dirty Pictures. And this you will see in your filter drop-down menu, and I have this here all the way down at the bottom nearly, and it's called Totally Red Dirty Pictures. And when I click on this, I have now this dialog box here. And first of all, if I would already know the image or the texture that I like for my image, I could click on here, and I have now all of those different names, and they mean they're all different textures. Or if I don't really know what I like, or I want to experiment a little bit, then I can click on Pick Your Texture. And this will open up the next dialog box. And this is now where it's really cool, because not only they have different textures, but the image is already with the texture. So it's not that I have to guess, do I like this image with this texture or not? It shows me already the end result pretty much. And the thing is here that if you don't want to see the image with the texture, you could also click on here, and then they would also show you only the texture thumbnail. And this way you get maybe a better idea of the texture itself and the tone. However, I think it's pretty cool that you can actually see how the image would look with this texture and with this tone. And here you have different options. You have 4 pages full of different textures and all these different tones. So this is the 3rd page, and then you have 3 more on this last page. So I think this is pretty cool. But I want to go to the Ginger Savannah, just because I like it with this greenish cast here. It looks a bit mysterious, a little bit more like a moody image, and therefore I picked this one. And this is once more how the texture look. And here you can also see that you can change now the blending mode. If you don't want to have it in overlay where it's pretty strong, you could change it already. But normally I leave everything as it is, and I just press OK. Alright, so now the cool thing is that it didn't just apply the texture, but it already is pretty clever in a way that it gives you 2 different layers here. And we have to fix here a few problems. And the first problem is, this is my texture layer and this is my tone layer. And the tone is important so that this texture makes sense for the image. Because of course, if you can go out and shoot your own texture, the problem might be if you have now such a greenish texture and you would only blend this texture now into this background, that the tone looks completely different to your original image. And that's why I really like this plugin, because it kind of thinks for you, and it knows that if you want this texture, you probably want this tone over the whole image. So that's pretty cool. But first of all, as I said, I have to fix my texture layer, because I don't really like this edge that it gives me here on top. So if I press onto Control or Command and T, I can just transform my image a little bit. So I just make this texture a little bit wider, and then I just say OK. So that kind of took care of this odd edge that was going on here. And the next thing is that I think the texture looks a little bit too sharp. I mean, I shot this image already with a really good depth of field at f11, because I wanted to have these drops in focus and the model's eyes and so on. And probably if the model would stand like right in front of this wall with this texture, would be probably believable that the texture is that strong. However, I think it would be even more realistic if I blur this a little bit. So it's looking a bit more than like she's a bit away from this wall with a more natural depth of field. So therefore I go into my filter once more and into blur, into Gaussian blur. And here you can change this now to anything you like. Between 10 and 15 is normally for me a good radius, so I probably just stay here with 10 or just say OK. Okay, so I think the texture and the background, that looks good. And now we just click onto our tone layer. And if I just click onto this black mask, and if I deactivate this for a moment with Shift, you can see what I meant with this tone for the image. So now you can see that I deactivated the actual texture, but I want to keep this tone over my whole image, because as I said, if I click this off and click this on, you see that the texture tone is on my model here. So before it's more bluish, because that's kind of how we changed this before in ACR, because I like this more blue or greenish tint. But now I go even a step further and have this tone also over my image. So that's something I want to keep. However, the thing I don't want to keep, and if I deactivate this again with Shift, you can see that I have this texture now on my model, and that's not what I want. And therefore they gave you this mask already, and if you just click on it and then with a white foreground color, you can cancel out this texture on this model face and even on the wardrobe if you want. As I said, I think it blends in here already pretty nice, just because, yeah, with this kind of grayish layer and this overlay. If we look here again, you see the blending mode is in overlay. If you want this even softer, you can go into soft light. Now you see it's hardly visible anymore on the wardrobe, so it's only now in the background. But now we also lost a little bit of the tone, so I want to keep this in overlay. But yeah, you can obviously mask this out, yeah, everything if you want to, or maybe just on the face, or you know, anywhere you want really. But for me now, the most important thing is that it takes still, well, in comparison to if you imagine how you normally have to do a composite with a pass or quick selection where you have to cut out the model, that normally takes a long time. And here I just use a brush, and therefore I think it's super easy. So I click B for brush. And as I said, I need now white to cancel this out on my black mask that I have already. And I just brush now very quickly over the model, anywhere where I don't really want this texture. And if I zoom in with Z or Z, then it's even a little bit more accurate, because obviously you don't want to cancel anything out around the model. And then, yeah, you can decide if you don't really like it on her wardrobe. I think it's not really a big deal because it blends pretty well all in overlay. But if you don't like it, you can also just color this out, especially on her hands here, because that's obviously not what I think looks realistic, to have this texture on her fingers. So I go also in this other hand here and just maybe with the small brush all the way into this finger, and then a bit bigger brush down here, and then even with a bigger brush down here. I'm changing here actually my brush just with clicking Control and Alt or Option, and then I can just have it bigger and smaller, then I don't have to go in here all the time. So that's how I just work a little bit faster. And maybe a bit down this arm here. Okay, this is pretty good. And if I want to fix this, then it's even faster. With Alt or Option, I can just click onto my mask, and here you see now some parts that are left out, and so I can just paint over these areas quickly as well. Okay, and then I just click with Alt again onto my option, and I'm with Alt or Option onto my mask, and now I'm back in my image. And yeah, as a final thing that you could do now, if you don't want this effect so strong overall, you could also just reduce the opacity of this complete group of layers here. You can obviously also reduce them singularly if you just want to reduce the texture on this layer or the tone on this layer. However, here you can just change them both, because normally I'm changing them if I don't want them quite so dramatic, but I don't want to only change the texture or the tone. So I want that the texture and the tone, that they stay in the same percentage, and therefore I can just go in here on my group and maybe change them down to like 70% if I don't want it so extreme. But I think this looks pretty cool. And yeah, if you like it, then definitely check out once more. If I click onto this website here, Get Totally Red, there you will find the dirty pictures, or of course, as I said, you can also just find your own really cool textures and just blend them into this mode here, into overlay, and then it's a lot faster than if you have to choose the pass or the quick selection to cut out a model with a whole composite. So that was just a quick and easy tip how you can add textures to your image and have fun trying it out.